Today's video is going to be kind of a short infomercial. Ethanol fuels destroy engines. That's coming up. And 30-year-old lawn equipment. Pterodactyl did a pretty good presentation. I don't know what I did with my stick magnet. When you have a 30-year-old piece of lawn equipment like this, you never know who worked on it before you owned it. Okay, so I'll try to get into the mantra of this with these magnets. These magnets hold the polarity, and a stick magnet, it kind of fools you. But a foolproof way, as I found out, again, I got another surprise, why this thing's been sitting since 2000. It's actually been sitting since 2011. I found a battery, it was dated 2012. They tried getting it running, I guess, a year after. So it's been sitting since 2011, so a better part of 10, 12 years this thing's been sitting. They said it broke down once before. What happened was these Kohlers, the 20 horse, the Kohler Pro, the Courage Pro, and most of them, the magnets delaminate. They come right out of this, they stick to the stator or alternator. Some of you guys like to call it an alternator. I wish you retards, every time I walk into this shop down below here, he corrects me. Oh, that's not an alternator, it's a stator. I said, well, the last time I came in here for parts for, you said it was an alternator. I don't know what's wrong with people here. It's got to be something in the water. People that come from outside this area that come here, they say the same thing. These people are strange around here. Foolproof way. You take one magnet and don't turn it around, don't turn it end. When you go to replace these magnets, before you even glue them, okay, even though you marked them, some nugget put them in this mower backwards. It happened once before, and I found traces of the glue. I marked my magnets and got it all back together without checking it. That was another thing, is Uncle Dutch did not proof his work like he usually does. He was in a rush, as he usually is. The wind's picking up a little bit here, blowing shit around. One side will attract, and where the next magnets join, you want to go in between them in here with your magnet, and it'll pull it to them here, and then when you go to the next here, it'll repel them. This is attracting, so I'm missing two magnets. I don't want to rush through the video here, but I did find traces of model glue even in here. These magnets, this is from another Kohler single cylinder, 18 horsepower, and about the same thing went on. That's the foolproof way, is all the way around you have where the magnets join. One side will oppose, it'll push it away, the other side it'll tract it. So you go around the stator that way, and if one side tracks, then the other side pushes away, then the other one will attract, and the other one will push away. Then you know you have your polarity right. Because I got this thing all back together, I was all excited. I got to get the other new tire on it yet, and I want to doll it up and paint it up. I don't plan on buying anything brand new because they all break and it's very expensive, especially with those electronic ignitions that they're coming out with and fuel injection. It's a nightmare. Don't buy one. Let the box stores eat them and let the dealers eat them. Let the stuff sit. You want to buy one of those new X-Mark mowers? I want to tell you something. The metal, the decks on them are fantastic. The metal is heavy. You want to talk about those engines? You're not going to get any life out of them. They're not made for durability. They're made to be a garage man's companion. Speaking of, I don't know what I did with it, but I got a bucket full of carburetors around here. I must have chucked it somewhere. There it is. We're not even into the cutting season, and this bucket is filling up. And some of it's my own equipment, and there's another bucket behind the shed. Ethanol fuels are bad. Now I can put the camera up. Okay? You guys don't understand what's inside a carburetor. It's either neoprene or nylon gaskets, mostly, in plastic. Okay? Which the plastic is a little bit better with the ethanol fuels. But when you go, you wonder why you tear one of those brand new carburetors apart and you'll never get it back together without getting a gasket kit for it. It's because the stuff is neoprene. So if you have a certain model mower that you cherish, you call a guy like me and I'll get you the proper carburetor if I can. Every now and then they get it wrong. I get the wrong shit in the box and it aggravates the hell out of me here. Just like that carburetor for that generator, I got to change stuff around because of the fuel line size. So make a lot of these aftermarket carburetors for multi-fit. Ethanol is mostly alcohol. So you wonder now why you fill up. And last week, not to mention the price of gas is going up, but you're checking your mileage and how many gallons you put in the vehicle. Don't go by the dollar, but do your math. And you're not getting the mileage. It's because the alcohol makes the engine, it's hard on the valves. It makes the engine work harder. You wonder why your vehicle runs a lot more powerful, a lot more efficiently in the winter. Well, the engine can atomize the ethanol fuels a lot better. Now, it comes to summer, and that stuff turns to a gas. That's why you have to have those emission systems. So much of your fuel in your gas tank evaporates overnight, you would not believe it, okay? That's why when you find these lawn tractors, and they sit a year, and the fuel tank's through, it was almost full when you left it sit. No taco truck this time. I'm inhaling dust. The wind's kicking up. It makes the engine work harder. It burns hotter, and it also, if you ever left a gas can set out in the sun, don't do it now with the ethanol content because it's increasing. It's bad for the carburetors with the nylon seals, and it's not even a true rubber anymore. And that's the reason why you don't get the lifespan out of these small engine carbs. So the answer is to buy non-ethanol fuels. Now, that's a quest around here because I got to take a trip to a different town just to buy non-ethanol fuel, but I have to because I can't keep changing carburetors and making the Chinese rich. This is how your government is screwing you. And I always get back to my governmental message. You got a bunch of goddamn people in Washington, D.C. holding up like a bunch of gangsters there with fences around them, trying to destroy us and our economy that Trump rebuilt. I'm going to tell you something, you scroungy little Muppet Biden. If I ever got a hold of you, I'd beat you half to death, tough guy. You wouldn't. The last guy that said he was going to punch me in the mouth ended up laying here bleeding for about a half hour. Then he shook hands and took off in his truck. And well, that was a while ago. But if I tell you something, it's pretty much fact. And especially those stories, you can pretty much take that one to the bank. But our government's destroying our vehicles. Okay, so that ethanol content that's in the fuel, it racks hell out of your car. Okay, it burns too hot. Your cylinders and your valves are running a lot hotter, so you're not going to get the lifespan out of the engine of your vehicle. And not to mention, with all that alcohol, the way it dissipates in the summer, you're going to wonder why you don't get the fuel mileage or you don't get the power out of your vehicle. There goes the taco truck. I knew I smelled it. Maybe that's why I was coughing. Well, anyway, I'm going to try to convince him into putting that thing to sleep. It's one of those things, like Derek would say, Anyway, I've never smelled something so stinky, so I've got to end my video at that. So hopefully I didn't give you anything that's too complicated. When you realign your magnets, double check, and you don't always have one of these on hand. That's why when you have that junk mower and you think it's junk, some of this stuff comes in handy when you save this stuff. Because then you can check your polarity with a polarized magnet, and this doesn't lie. This can lie, it can kind of fool you. So when you have a 30-year-old mower and somebody took it apart how many years ago and you get a hold of it, you never know what the last guy did to it. Just like a used car. You get you open that trunk or you open the hood and you get all kinds of surprises. Please, Lord, put that thing to sleep. Maybe one of those kamikaze Mexican pilots will, I don't know, then they'll get free tacos. I hate that. Thing's so noisy, but take this to the bank with these magnets. Please get that out of here. It's the most ill-tuned, ill-smelling engine. I don't know what kind of carburetor he has on it. I don't know. Maybe he's pouring taco sauce in it or something. Check your work. So I got a surprise thinking I know it all. Every now and then I told you, I fool the shit out of me. You think you're good? That's just when you get humbled down by a simple mistake like that. I had this engine apart 4 times, thinking I had everything right, never thinking to check the polarity of the magnets. So when you buy something that's that old and it's not running, there's usually a reason why it stopped running. And it's like this. I figured out the starter was froze up, and I figured that's all there was to the equation. Until I pulled the Stator hub off and I found out that the magnets were also delaminated. But it did start that way. And that might have been part of the grinding, that they might have re-glued those magnets and still couldn't get it running, I think is what happened. And when I tried to get it running, they all came off and stuck to the stator instead of the flywheel here. And that's what happened there, is I got it running and it's still not charging. And I'm going, what the hell's wrong with the charging system? Then I take it off and I figure, oh, it's a matter of just sticking the magnets back on in order and I'm all good to go. Well, that didn't happen, okay? Luckily, you need a noodle, and that's why I make these videos, because some other poor guy's going to go through this in the future. It's okay to mark those magnets, but if that mower was used and somebody else owned it and it wasn't running when you got it, 9 chances out of 10 you're going to have a big time problem with it. So, to make a long story short, unless you want to end up with buckets full of carburetors like I do for my own machines and local folks around here, okay, don't use ethanol fuels, and learn to think when you engage in a project like I did. Don't be as brainless as what I did and put it back together and think you got it. You got to check your work. And this junk, put it in a bag, put it in a place where you know you can find it. I have one place where I put stuff like this, stuff that's used to proof things. When I proof something, I have a little basket in there, and it sits on top of the one cabinet, and it doesn't go anywhere. Crank bolts, crankshaft bolts, and different things. You got to save all that. Not every crank bolt is 7/16. This particular Kohler engine has, I believe it's a 3/8. And I know there's other Kohler engines, they got a 5/16 crank bolt. But it's still good to have a crank bolt, and they're not always necessarily the right length. So then, you go to Tractor Supply and you buy some long bolts and you mark what they are. If you don't have a thread gauge, mark 3/8 coarse, 5/16, quarter 20 coarse, and then get fine thread, because that's where you get fooled. And then you're going to spend another $10 or $12 getting, get from 10 millimeter bolts all the way up to, or 10 millimeter shaft bolts all the way down to, say, 4 millimeter, 5 millimeter. Because this shit, when you're working on it, is full of it. So even if you don't have the right length bolt, you have a selection of bolts that the threads and the threads are marked, so you know it's say 5/16 coarse, because there's 5/16 fine. And that's what happened to me. I put a Predator motor on there, and that happens to be the back of those Predators. I believe I got 5/16 fine thread is what it ends up being, because I originally thought it was like 8 millimeter metric, and it wasn't metric. That didn't thread in. 5/16 fine thread, I think, is what those Predators are. So the wood chipper's back together. I got that project squared away. Take it to heart. There's ways to do things. Even if you don't have a lot of money, you're still going to spend money. But when you want to put something back together and have something for yourself, especially if you don't have a lot of money, like I said, I'm retired, my budget's set, and the world creates you more problems daily than you can solve in a day's time. So listen to the experts when there's cheap ways to do things. If you have a small engine shop near you and you have that problem, they might have just one magnet on hand out of a stator. It's mandatory that a small engine shop has one. And it's not necessarily something you can stick in your toolbox, because it's going to cling to everything that's metal in there. Now, it's different if you have a toolbox and you have enough common sense to put a little piece of tape on it and maybe stick it to the roof of the toolbox. Because that's what I might end up doing here with my cabinets, is sticking one of these magnets on the door of the cabinet. That way, if I have this problem again, because I really had a root for those, and for this flywheel where I stuck, God damn, I got another Kohler flywheel. It would have been nice if the thing just dropped right on, but the crankshaft sizes from the single cylinder to the twin cylinders are different crankshaft sizes. So I couldn't just drop this critter on. I had to carefully chisel these magnets out, and one of them did broke. It did break, and then I had to, subsequently, I had enough magnets to do the job, and that's how I end up with excess magnets, but I don't mind keeping them, because if I have to give one to you, a buddy or something, here, take it, it ain't gonna hurt me, I still have another one. I'm out of breath. I think I've talked perfect common sense about checking your work, because if you're one of those guys like Uncle Dutch, like I said, I think I know at my age pretty much what I'm doing, how to handle myself with this stuff. But every now and then you get the customer that comes in, and if you own that customer like I own this one, it's a problem. It's a real problem, that you can't complete your day's work or whatever, and you got to keep tearing it apart. It does hurt the brain cells, but that's why I didn't get a haircut yet, because I want to be able to move this thing around. That I don't want to, and it's too heavy to push. This is a fairly heavy tractor. I mean, it's not a real big one, but I still don't want to be pushing this one. Or pulling it and yanking on it and breaking things. This old girl's back together, and she's going to get all prettied up and painted. You'll see her sometime during the summer. And then hopefully we'll have some more jobs rolling in. Right now, I think Biden's scared off anybody from spending an extra dollar that they don't have to spend. So I don't want to get bent out of shape. But we got to get these communists out of our White House, okay? Because like I said, that scroungy little muppet, and Pelosi, you fucking sea hag, pig vomit Pelosi. I'm gonna tell you something. You guys don't want to deal with a guy like me. Not many do, especially law enforcement around here, because they know what I'm made out of. I'm still made out of pretty much cast iron, but even cast iron breaks. Maybe, you know, it's hurting my brain cells, but I like to share my knowledge with people because Terrell, technically, I mean, he has the old timers method to do that. But when your polarity's correct inside and everything's sitting there, you can check it. And then you just glue your magnets in, use your little clothespins to keep them separated. If I can pretty much do it by eye. I don't have to have the magnets perfectly. It does matter if they're touching. There still needs to be that air gap space between the magnets. You could also use another magnet, which is about perfect, the thickness of one of these magnets. I think it's a little too thick. If I remember the last time I set one up, I didn't use another magnet. I think I used clothespins. So I like Terrell's videos, and I like talking about Terrell. I love Derek's arcane sense of humor. It's more like mine. It's in tune because I get into this stuff, and I comment on some of these the channels where other people are doing stuff, and they got hot-headed. Listen, you got to have a sense of humor when you tear this shit apart anyway. You know, you get Fluffy the rat in there. One last year, I had a copperhead snake wrapped around the goddamn the spindle, and the guy must have started it up with the copperhead on top of the metal deck, and he got all wrapped up in the spindle. Boy, I'll tell you, you take this shit apart, you do get some life surprises. So I am out of breath. Enjoy that, and that's a lesson on magnets. Okay? That's a lesson on magnets. You go around the stator, one will attract, the other one will oppose. It'll push it away. And you do that all the way around without flipping that magnet around, okay? Thanks.